Okay, so by now you guys should have the aim in your notebooks, including the number. You should have written it exactly as it's shown here on the slide. And we discussed the do now, so on we go. We'll get started here. All right, caste system classes. I'll give you a second to copy this stuff down, and then we'll go over it. In the Indus River Valley, there is a social system called the caste system, CASTE. And we will give you the formal definition of that later on in the slide presentation. But this caste system is derived from the Hindu religion, essentially. So Hinduism, when we do a whole unit just on belief systems and religions, so we'll talk in depth about Hinduism once we get to that unit. But Hinduism kind of gives way to this social system that exists in the Indus River Valley. So the caste system is the social system of the Indus River Valley, like we said, and it has several kind of groupings in it. The top of that system are called the Brahmin. They're the priests. Again, so when we think critically about the social system of a particular place, that social system and who ranks where in that social system can tell us a lot about the cultural values of a particular people. So in this particular case, when we see that priests are ranked very, very high in their social system, we know that religion is a big part of their life there. So Brahmin at the top, and then Kshatriya. One of my favorite things to do in class for my own personal amusement is when we come across really, really difficult words, I ask you guys to pronounce them, and this is one that kids usually butcher. But Kshatriya. Kshatriya is the warrior class of the Indus River Valley, and they come second. So they are just below Brahmin. Next are Vaishyas. They are the merchants and landowners. And then Sudras, they are the commoners, peasants, and servants. So they kind of sit at the lowest level. Well, kind of sort of lowest. And I'll tell you what we mean here. All right, so we don't have much here, but I'll give you a second to copy this. Okay, so we took a look at all the different groups that are inside this caste system. And there's another group that kind of sort of is part of this discussion. They're called the untouchables. In the Indian caste system, untouchables are the lowest of the lowest of the low as far as social status goes. They are the street sweepers. They deal in human and animal waste, dead bodies, and just really the worst jobs that you can think about. And the reason they're called untouchables is because the rest of the classes that are part of the Indian caste system do not associate with them. They are essentially social outcasts. They don't go to the same places as them. I mean, we're talking segregation like by geography, meaning they don't even share the same spaces with them. They have their own towns and cities, these people. So they're considered impure from birth. Now, the interesting part about this discussion is that we see a weird collision here between social inequality and religious belief. So the conundrum that these people in India, even today, find themselves in is they have to wrestle with the idea of social equality going against their own personal religious beliefs. So this caste system and this separation and the stratification of classes in India is part of religious belief. So it's hard to reconcile one with the other. And in a progressive age, when social justice and social equality is continuing to kind of advance, maybe slower in some places than others, this is a system that's going to have to be reconciled. You know, people are eventually going to have to pick, what are you in favor of? Are you in favor of social equality, or are you in favor of hanging on to your religious beliefs? And that's the interesting part of this discussion. Okay, last slide. Oh, I guess there is one more after this. So the visual representation of this caste system is seen in this chart here on the slide, and it's built like a triangle or a pyramid in this particular case, right? So there's a reason specifically why we use this shape and why this shape is structured in this way, okay? There's really two reasons. Number one, the pyramid shape for a social structure tells us who sits above who with regard to kind of rank, right? Like social rank. So by looking at this chart, we can easily tell that the Brahmin sit above the Kshatriya, who sit above the Vaishya, who sit above the Sudra, and everybody sits above the untouchables, right? The other thing that this chart, these kinds of charts represent is, proportion of the population. The amount of area, I mean, if we think about it in mathematical terms, right? The amount of area inside the Brahmin section of the chart is significantly less than the amount of area inside the Sudra part of the chart, right? So this pyramid shape tells us who sits above who, but also what proportion of the population belongs to each class. So Brahmin are the highest class, but they also are representing the smallest portion of the population. Kshatriya, there's a few more Kshatriya than Brahmin, and there's even more Vaishya than Kshatriya, and there's even more Sudra than Vaishya, and you get how it works, right? So the reason I wanted to bring this up is because this shape is a shape that we will use continuously going forward when we take a look at social structures in other civilizations. And those two ideas behind why we use this chart are important to understand when we go and talk about those social structures, so that you understand this shape points out who sits above who, but also the proportions of society that exist in each class also. All right, one more slide real quick. So last but not least, gender roles. So in the Indus River Valley, talking about social structure, the positioning of women to men in this particular case, men have more rights and responsibilities than women, and unfortunately, that's going to be the case in a lot of places. Weirdly, except for Sparta. When we get to Sparta, we will learn about that. Lights just went off in my room. Come on, lights. Thank you. Lights are motion sensitive in here. So only men can inherit property. Women are not allowed to be priests. Only men are educated. Women stayed home and just worked, and that was pretty much their deal. So we'll see how the roles of women as compared to men are different, society to society. But in this particular case, in the Indus River Valley, men have significantly more rights and responsibilities and so on. Women are basically responsible for homemaking and raising children more so than anything else. So that's kind of the deal.